So I wanted to go over some interview questions for people and get you thinking about potential answers that are likely going to land in a way that even if the person doesn't the person being your interviewer, even if they don't fully appreciate the exact context from which you're speaking, they'll be able to basically pick up the way in which you think. For instance, when I was interviewing for my current job, my boss asked me, tell me, let's say that you have somebody who reports to you, and you ask them to do a job, and they flat out tell you no. What do you do? And that kind of threw me. Like, I've never been asked that question before. I told him as much. I stopped and I thought about it, and I think the fact that I stopped and thought about it was actually pretty important. And the fact that I showed just like I was very emotive about how like I was taken aback. And then I stopped and thought. So I'm somebody who tries to think in a way in which helps the human condition, while also my politics makes me champion working class values. So my initial response, once I thought about it, was, well, maybe if you have a conversation with this person, you'll uncover some things. Maybe you find out that they feel they have real life skills that they bring that this simply aren't being utilized, and they kind of feel left out there like nobody actually cares. And if you actually take the time to hear what's going on, you might, in the sake of having that conversation, be able to figure out not only how to fix the problem, but perhaps even create an even better solution than making the problem go away. And so I'm thinking, here's this working class game I'm spitting, right? And I'm really looking out for the little guy. And while that may have registered my boss's mind, what he liked is that I was systematically minded. I didn't just immediately decide, hey, I know what's going on. I told you to do something. You were subordinate, told me no. Now you must feel, the wrath of my, punitive, punishment. And he liked that I actually took the time to consider, do I even know what's going on, right? Do I have a systematic understanding, a complete, fully, and comprehensive understanding of what's going on? So I would encourage you to be creative with your answers, right? The more in which you can stick in somebody's mind in a good way, the better you'll have a chance of getting the job, right? They just won't be able to forget you. Anytime they think of a good answer, right, you're right there, because it was like, oh my God, like who gave that answer? It's like there's plenty of times where I've had some of the best conversations just with random strangers, and they actually thank me for it. People love to hear, they love to engage in something thought provoking, and so give it to them, right? And this is your chance to shine. Don't you couch things in like, well, I've only been doing it for a little while, or like, yeah, I'm good at it, but you can say, yeah, the great thing about it is that even though I only have a year in, I've shown a great aptitude in learning. I've created things that are beyond many junior capacities, right? Whatever you need to say, if you feel the need to call out that your experience isn't exactly what would make you feel comfortable enough to kind of just flaunt, then at least couch it in something that says, yeah, it's there, you're pointing it out, but this is what's so awesome about this limited amount of time that I've been in, is my great achievements regardless of, right? And so just be aware of that. Always lean into your strengths, especially if somebody calls out a weakness. Make sure you lean into your strengths. And, part of a weakness is like, let's say they ask you what your hobbies are, right? And you say, well, I actually play video games. I like to play MMOs. And then that'll probably get somebody to say, oh, really? Tell me about that. While in the back of their mind, they're thinking, wow, this guy wastes his time playing video games. Like, yeah, of course, it's actually a great community. I quite enjoy, talking to people, especially in a pandemic where it's hard for me to get out. Immediately, you've made it a personal connection. So I'm talking to my friends that are across the states, and I'm sure you guys have done that as well. Have you ever connected with any of your family, digitally across the states? You can open that up to the interviewer. Make it personal. Oh yeah, in Kentucky. Oh yeah, well, we actually have somebody from Kentucky who I talk to all the time, right? You can immediately try to make that connection. Be like, wow, I never thought about that. There was value in there. Wow, look at this guy. Not just playing video games, he's looking out for his mental health, right? He's reaching out and as part of a community. Anyway, that aside, long-winded intro. question number one, and this is not a comprehensive list by any means. Tell me about a time that you were tasked with an assignment that didn't go as planned and what you did, right? And so what I was thinking would be a good thing to do if you're ever in an interview situation and you have these questions arise, is that you go ahead and have your resume in front of you at all times, right? So print off extra copies, make sure you can give them to them. They'll likely have them printed off anyway, but have extra copies so that way when the questions come up, you can actually look at your resume. These are pre-planned things that you've done. So scan your resume and find an answer there, and and use that to your advantage. And so tell me about a time in which you had a project. What was a project or task with an assignment that didn't go as planned? Okay, well, let's say you play World of Warcraft like I do, and let's say that you're trying to get your KSM and you're running a 15, and what didn't go as planned? Yeah, everything, right? Maybe somebody pulled mobs who they shouldn't have. They thought that you needed extra percentage when you didn't. People pulling ahead of the tank. It's spiteful, and they're not running away from the spirits, right? Melee have to deal with storming, or they're just running in and they're not be able to do any damage, or there's necrotic and your healer sucks, right? And there's just a lot of things that can happen. So, well, I had an assignment where it was collaborative, right? It was a meeting that was going to take about an hour. Working with everyone, it seemed that we kind of had an idea that everyone knew what was going on, right? So going forward, we realized about 10 minutes into this that I think a few of us had a few misunderstandings as to exactly what was the best role here, right? Maybe one of your DPS are out there pulling ahead of the tank. You don't need to get into the nitty gritty of what I'm talking about as far as the character classes or the DPS tanking and healing. But this is me speaking parenthetically, so you can think subtextually as you're giving an answer. Right, so you're going to give very generic things. Well, yeah, we were working together. About 10 minutes into it, realized that maybe not everyone had a fundamental understanding of the goal, right? The ultimate goal. So I actually started communicating, right? So what do you do when you are right before you do your key, or right before perhaps say Spires of Ascension? Right, perhaps right before the first boss, you say, "Hey, by the way, we're going to go left, pull a couple of packs, and we're going to go head to the right and grab the stealth packs over there." If you've never played done the Dungeon Spires of Ascension, that probably makes no sense to you, but that's okay. That's neither here nor there, right? And so you're going to communicate, and you're going to give expectations, so people know exactly what's going to befall them. The next step, what's the linear progression through this. And so talk about that. Yeah, so I actually communicated. I took the time to find out, what's people's current understanding of what needs to be done. Found out it was misaligned with our ultimate goal. I communicated what our ultimate goal was, and ultimately, let's say you didn't even time it, right? You might even wanted to say that, and not only was it not going as planned, but we also, with that hour, we found out that we actually had to schedule a second meeting. We were hoping that we didn't have to. The best part is that we did end up coming up with some really good ideas and some basic ways to be able to help communicate in the future of how to kind of adapt and overcome in a similar situation. So. Even though we weren't necessarily successful within the base parameters as one time, we were able to at least harness the skills necessary to succeed the next time. And so, again, I was speaking parenthetically, so there's a lot to that answer. But the thing is when somebody asks you how it goes as planned, oh my God, let me tell you about it. I worked with somebody, and man, were they hard to work with. Okay, well, Like if you're going to say things like this, it's likely going to expose that, or at least if not expose, it's going to suggest that you don't take responsibility for difficult situations, and you like to point fingers rather than look for possible solutions, right? Nobody's going to want to look at that, and perhaps they're in real life, right? It's completely acceptable that that you have a deadline and it was not within your control, right? Because external factors. But that's not something that on your very best foot in an interview that an interviewer is going to want to hear, right? Okay, so question 2. Tell me about a time when you had to work with someone difficult to get along with, right? So there's that, right? You just say, oh my gosh, oh, they were just so terrible. Oh man, everyone just made fun of them. Or say, well, actually, I was new, right? However it was, right? Maybe you were, again, maybe you can pull from dungeons, right? So I tanked, and tanking my way through someone difficult to get along with, right? Somebody dies, GG tank, learn to hold aggro, noob. And it's like, my God. But sometimes people with a mouth, they are good at what they do. They just like to run their mouth. That's not necessarily bad, though frustrating. So yeah, I was part of a project where one of the people couldn't help but just kind of have this back-talky sass. But at the end of the day, they were actually one of the most productive in our group. And so it certainly frustrated me that I had to deal with kind of what may be perceived as a verbal harassment, but it actually taught me a lot because it helped me examine my priorities. Were my priorities to not have my feelings hurt, or were my priorities to actually complete my my goal at hand? And since my priorities were to complete my goal at hand, I really feel like, as difficult of a situation as it was, as much as I didn't necessarily like being around that person, they really taught me that at the end of the day, skills come from places that aren't homogenized or pasteurized, right? We can't necessarily decide how we're going to take the skill sets given to us. And just because somebody rubs us the wrong way doesn't mean that they don't have immense value to the project. Oh my gosh, wow, that's an amazing answer, right? Granted, they're probably not going to say that, they're probably going to clap, but I bet they're going to give some sort of testament to like, wow, that was a really good answer. And when you have that, that's good. Again, go in for the emotional connection. Don't overdo it, right? If you're talking about video games or skiing or running or whatever it is you're doing, get in there, make a personal anecdote, keep it pretty short. If they decide that they want to add on to it, validate them, but don't add on to theirs unless they really, it's so obvious they want you to keep going. If you aren't sure it's obvious that they want you to keep going, best to hedge your bet and just kind of go back to waiting for the next question, or maybe even asking them, hey, are there any other questions that you'd like to hear about me? Right, and you can prompt them into getting right back on track, and that's actually a skill, right? Especially if you're in any sort of administrative capacity. A lot of managers are very bird-brained, right? They've got to keep their eye on a lot of different things, and they need somebody who can really help navigate their focus. And if you say, hey, are any other questions, it's entirely likely that if there's more people there, that they'll realize that you brought them on track, and then you'll make them laugh. And then that's your opportunity again to say, yeah, that's actually a skill I've had to employ in multiple jobs. It's something I'm actually quite known for. And so now you made them laugh. You're just, saturating their brain in serotonin, dopamine. They're, very relaxed and happy. And, and so now you're creating a memory that's encapsulated in an emotion that is near impossible to forget. Right, man. Don't you remember that guy gave some great answers? Don't you remember that how well that she answered that question? Like, my gosh, I never even considered considered that, or that was the best answer I've ever heard. And like as they're talking behind closed doors, that's the thing, the recurring theme, the best answer. Earworm them. Don't just tell them what they want to hear. Or don't just tell them what they think they want to hear, right? They're going to ask you a question expecting an answer. tell them what you want them to hear. Tell them that not only have you considered the implications of their question, but also you're process oriented to the point that, yeah, there were some limitations here. I recognize my own limitations here, and this is how I'm going to ameliorate those limitations in the future. And I guarantee it's going to go over well. All right, 3. Tell me about a time when you received negative feedback and how you dealt with it. Okay, so here's another time, right? So here my tank, right? Nice route, bro. Right, so you play World of Warcraft right now. I'm playing Shadowlands. So the season 1 affix is Pride, which is this massive ad that spawns after you get a certain amount of percentage within your different dungeons that you're running. If you don't properly time it, you need to fight it alone. So basically, you need to fight groups of monsters that add up to a certain percentage. At that certain percentage, then this ad spawns. Well, they can spawn in the middle of fighting other things, which is usually pretty bad. Not always, but usually. And so if you don't properly plan your route and how you're going to kill things, or if things get pulled on accident because people don't know what they're doing and they're strafing too far to the left or right and they're getting proximity aggro on things that you shouldn't be pulling, well, then you have to consider that you have additional percentage that you hadn't actually considered and calculated into. So now you need to, going forward, that because they can have pretty severe implications. Well, tanking, yeah, I did just fine. Mythics 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 9. So why should a 10 be any different? Okay, well, I can accidentally get through these 10s, right? So why should a 12 be any different? Okay, well, now I'm kind of getting hammer-fisted, and I'm not really liking that. I'm getting hammer-fisted right in the face. And now not only am I getting hammer-fisted, but people are really just like flaming me. Just like, best tank in the world, lols, right? Oh, where'd you get this route, bro? And so that makes you feel bad. And when somebody makes fun of you, your first reaction is to get defensive. F you. I know what I'm doing. Well, and certainly you probably do know what you're doing. If you're able to tank a Mythic 9 or above, chances are you know what you're doing, at least with your class. You may not know if you're doing your route, right? That's something separate, right? So there's going to be a different dimension within knowing what you're doing. So tell me about a time when you received negative feedback and how you dealt with it. Yeah, well, I had a project, and I actually I had a pretty good idea of what I was doing based upon my junior roles getting up to this point. This was my first time, right? So my first 10. So this is my first time that I've actually undergone a project of this magnitude. Right, I've done lesser projects that were close, but not exactly this. And so there were differences, and it was pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious that as much as I thought I was prepared, that nothing but experience would prepare me. And then not only that, but like as obvious as it was, man, there were some people who really took the time to verbally point out just how obvious and just how bad I should feel. And at first, like, I got mad, like, yeah, come on, like, I don't need to hear that, and perhaps I don't. But at the end of the day, that person gave me a gift, right? They pointed out in a way in which I couldn't forget, right? Hours later, I was thinking about what a jerk this person was. And yet they pointed out in a way in which I couldn't forget that I needed to improve. And so what did I do? I actually went to the internet. I downloaded an app, right? This app, in this case, would be Mythic Dungeon Tools, right? Again, you don't need to tell your interviewer Mythic Dungeon Tools, but just downloaded an internet app. I examined some of the administrative portions of my project of what I needed to do, right? In this case, carved out my exact route, make sure I know where my different percentage points are, where Pride's going to spawn, so I know exactly what to expect. And so that way, in the future, I'm not going to be, it's not, one, going to be so glaringly obvious I don't know what I'm doing, and two, I can actually accept criticism, right? I'm going to know what I'm doing. I ameliorated, my, I guess my ignorance, right? My lack of understanding, my lack of knowledge in this area. And I got thicker skin because it was a jerk who helped me get to this point, and I'm thankful for it. And again, who gives that answer? Like, you're going to be, these answers are going to be stuck in the heads of your interviewers. And that doesn't mean you're going to get the job, but it means that you are increasing the likelihood that you will. So that's ultimately all you can do. You can't go in there and decide for them, you're going to give me this job, but you can make it as hard as possible to tell them, for them to tell you no. Well, thanks for listening. I hope these have helped. Again, this isn't any sort of comprehensive list right? There's no magic spell that you can cast that's going to make an interviewer decide that you are the one and then advocate for you day and night to their HR department to make sure that it is indeed you. But you can certainly be that person that, again, just raises the likelihood that they can't get you out of their heads. And, it works out in your favor quite often. And having that creative way to think of the skills that you've built while gaming, especially like, think skin. Do you have any idea, especially like in call centers and office environments, how thin-skinned people are, just how adolescent and infantile and how annoying that is to the managers? And if you can show demonstrably that not only do you have thick skin, but then you can use that to then propel yourself to success in the future, you're doing something right, and you're going to impress people. And think about that, right? And so what you've done, how you've done it, the feedback you've received and how you've received it, what you've done because of it. And maybe you should marry some of those and find connections. And in an interview, it's fine to find some connections that don't necessarily exist. This person was a jerk and I also did this. Oh, so let me tell them this person was a jerk, so I did this, right? In order to make sure that, again, you're putting your best foot forward, because, again, these are things that you have done. You have built thick skin. You have accomplished that project, but there's not always the ability for the exact beautiful storytelling that you're doing in an interview, which is why you're crafting it from real aspects of what's happened. So don't lie, right? Just be creative in the different pieces that you work your puzzle together. And I'm telling you, you'll find a lot of people that will resonate when you just knock a question out the park, right? Somebody's like, man, this guy's got a good head on his shoulders. Right? He's thinking. He's not just deciding what's going on. This lady here, she knows what's up, right? She's had to deal with some pushback. She knows what's going on. She knows how to make sure to stand up for herself and get things going, right? And so it's great, right? This person's not going to fall apart the second that they get negative negative stress in the office environment, because something Bob over there is can't handle it at all. But anyway, I will quit rambling. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your time. If you have any specific questions, feel free to comment. I'll see the comments, and I'll see about creating any sort of follow-up content based upon any sort of popularity. Alrighty, thank you, and may the force be with you.